This is not a dream. Not a dream. We are using your brain's electrical system as a receiver. We are unable to transmit through conscious neural interference. You are receiving this broadcast as a dream. We are transmitting from the year 1999. You are receiving this broadcast in order to alter the events you are seeing. Our technology is not developed to transmitters strong enough to reach your conscious state of awareness, but this is not a dream. You are seeing what is actually occurring for the purpose of causality violation.
Senseless acts of extreme violence. And we have got reports of sketching past people mutating, their bodies swelling and distorting, changing somehow. Locally, the mass killings appear to have dwindled.
All the major cities on the East Coast are silent. We lost contact with Los Angeles and the West Coast last night, so it's impossible at this time to know how many unaffected people are left. If for any reason you are one of us who hasn't become infected, take shelter. Do not trust any friends or family members. I repeat, do not.
I'm gonna hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found some shredded long johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now. It takes us over, and it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it.
Clear!
Clear.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Good evening and welcome to Axis of Action. This is our Halloween discussion. Today we're going to be talking about 3 films, all by legendary director John Carpenter. The first movie we're going to be talking about is his 1982 movie, The Thing, based upon the science fiction short story Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. And sadly, it was a film that killed off his big studio career. The next film is a movie made much later than that called Prince of Darkness, and another movie made in his 90s. Some may say it's his only good 90s movie, In the Mouth of Madness. And the reason why we're just going to be discussing this is that Carpenter refers to these 3 films as his Apocalypse Trilogy. And so, we're here to discuss them. I'm Darkside, and with me today is...
Average Gamer.
Cave Johnson.
And the Doctor.
So, let's start with The Thing. It's sort of like what to say. It's not what to say about the thing. It's what not to say about the thing, because it is a brilliant, brilliant movie, and definitely one of Carpenter's best.
And probably one of the best remakes. On not being smart, it really is a remake of the thing from another world, and it's more faithful to the book.
Exactly.
And what's really
I say exactly.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is that it's not out of spite, but out of admiration. Because I mean, I think, for example, in Halloween, there's on one of the television screens when the kids are watching, it's playing The Thing from Another World, and it's really, in a sense, it's kind of his nod and admiration to the director.
And Carpenter admitted that he was a huge fan of Howard Hawks and tried to emulate Howard Hawks, who produced the original, the 1951 film, The Thing from Another World, and some say he co-directed most of the scenes. The director who got credit was Christian Nyby, who apparently, when the remake came out, he called the movie. He said about the remake version of it. He said, "If you want blood, go to a slaughterhouse. This movie is a good advertisement for J.W. Scotch or something like that."
Yeah, I think what's tragic is that, as you said, I mean, John Carpenter was talking about it. He saw it in a sci-fi magazine, and I think on the cover or one of the articles in that magazine said it has his movie, the worst film ever made. You know, the question mark like that, and it really impacted him. And I know it's pretty early to talk about it, but I think in the sense that if that didn't happen, you probably wouldn't get some of the movies that a lot of people like. Had to have cult classics. Escape from New York.
Did Ben Lyons write that article?
I don't know. I'm not very sure. I just only had just that story. But
in joke.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
As a little tyke, Ben Lyons destroyed John Carpenter's career.
And then went on to say that I Am Legend is one of the greatest movies ever made. But and you're right in that this movie was made out of admiration to Howard Hawks' movie, and in a way, and I said that Carpenter tried to emulate Howard Hawks in many of his films. Assault on Precinct 13 was basically a remake of a Howard Hawks Western, but done in then present-day Los Angeles. But I think Carpenter recognized off the bat that if he was going to remake The Thing, he wasn't going to remake it. He was going to make it more faithful to Campbell's original novel.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off. I'm just trying to. I don't want to take up too much of the conversation. So, if Cave, Doc, what do you have to say about John Carpenter's The Thing?
One of the best horror films, I mean true horror films, I've seen probably in my entire life. There have been sort of other ones along the way, but The Thing is usually the one that sticks to me, and the first one that comes to mind when anyone asks me about what I think is legitimate horror and not just a slasher or teen horror. These movies that attempt to call themselves horror, but they're more just, you want to see the douchebags die, and in the most gruesome ways possible.
Yeah, you love the characters in this film. I think what's also, real quick before we go a little deeper, is it's interesting is that John Carpenter, I remember watching a Halloween special about all these famous horror directors, and for what Carpenter pursues with his horror films is that the evil that comes from within. Like The Thing. The Thing comes from within this, supposedly innocent creature and comes out as a very ugly, terrifying thing. And with it, he was showing at the time, the Red Scare, AIDS, and other, racism, etc. And in the sense that The Thing personified it. It's very ugly. It's very disgusting, but it's hidden within the person. You don't see it until it explodes out of the person. Sorry, I can go back and just talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean it's an extremely smart horror film in multiple ways, just because it's, just in, I mean, really from just a technical standpoint, I think it's a masterpiece of practical effects, of set design, and then just in terms of the story, it's one of those few horror films. I mean, I would certainly agree that it's one of the few horror films that does really resonate with you, that does give this impression of horror, but also is a horror film that doesn't rely on the characters being morons in order to move the plot forward.
Yeah,
the characters are about as smart as really they could be in this particular situation. That they are encountering this creature that really could, be any one of them, that could assimilate any one of them. That they don't really have a particular idea beyond just a burned out husk of what this creature actually looks like to begin with, because it's a sort of a, well, for lack of a better term, it's a xenomorph. It can morph. It can change into anything that it comes into contact with. So
yeah,
go ahead, Average.
I don't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. You had a point, so go for it.
And I think what's also interesting is going back. It's also you don't want to see it because that's what makes it scarier, because you don't know what it really exactly is. And I think that's what makes was such a shame with the prequel, is you don't need a prequel because you see enough of the Norwegian station just to give you a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the film.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like, we know exactly what happened. Why? What mystery is there, for this movie? So.
If I just may cut in for a minute, it's truly one of the great ensemble horror movies that I've seen, in that every character is, you remember them.
Human.
You remember, they're human. You remember them. Well, they're human for a bit. And when you compare it to the 1951 Thing from Another World, and when you compare it to the prequel, it really shows how those two movies fail as ensemble pieces, because the original film, The Thing from Another World, is really just full of stock 1950s B-movie stereotypes. You got the kind of, the Air Force, the military man who's in charge, and then you got the scientist who's crazy, and he says, we had to make peace with it. We had to talk with it. He was actually the most memorable character in the movie. And then you have, of course, the only female character in the movie does nothing, and all she does is make coffee. It's the whole movie. The whole movie is in between monster attacks, it's them standing around drinking coffee. And
I respectfully disagree.
Oh, you disagree?
Sure.
Well, let's talk about this. Why do you disagree?
Okay. But at the same time, I understand. I mean, looking at it is that. Give me a moment. I don't want to start like a moron, but. Looking at it, I think I understand the period. I mean, the 1950s.
Well, yes, I understand. I'm just saying that.
No.
Go ahead.
Oh, I agree. I'm trying to say it was only a couple years after World War II, so a lot of these guys had some kind of military experience, have seen things, seen some terrible things. So, in a sense, that although they haven't never seen it, experienced, seen an alien creature that wants to take over the world, I can understand it. I mean, that mannerism is that they understand what's going on. They realize that this is a very serious threat. And I think what's nice about the female character is that she's smart, she's strong. And for a 1950s character, I mean, you have a lot of women. She doesn't scream. It's like helpless. She does what she says. She doesn't stand there. But I mean,
here's the thing: the female character from the original Thing, I don't remember anything about her. When the movie's over, I don't remember. All I remember is them standing around drinking coffee, saying, "Well, this thing is strange." And let's compare. We were talking about this earlier. Let's compare this to a movie that was made a couple years later called Them, which is about giant ants. In that movie, there's a daughter of a professor, and there's all the strange things happening in New Mexico. No, it's not related to crystal meth. They go to New Mexico.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, the answer. This is the result of Heisenberg crystal meth. They took it, and now they're giant, and they're killing people. But she was very. I mean, okay, of course, there was a scene where an ant comes up, a giant ant appears. It's its first appearance, and she screams, and the FBI and the police officer have to shoot it down. But that's understandable. First time.
Yeah.
But second time, they go down to the den, and she's the one who's saying, she's sort of like giving orders. She's like, okay, burn everything in this room. And she knows about ants. She's smart. She's smart. She knows what she's doing,
Yeah.
and she gives orders. The woman from the original Thing, however, is just sort of there to be the woman of the group, I guess. And
Yeah.
I understand this is 1950s. I'm just saying that,
No problem.
but that's like I said, it's the whole movie is a capsule of 1950s B movie.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You've got the crazy scientists, you've got the military guys, you've got to stand back, this is a man's job. But if we could get off the topic of the original Thing and talk about the Thing prequel,
Yeah.
that's a case of
The Crystal Skull, the group.
yes, the Crystal Skull group. That's a case of, okay, we've got main character, and basically everyone else is cannon fodder, which is sort of like a
Everyone's cannon fodder. That's the thing. I mean, no pun intended, but that's the problem with the film is that if anyone has watched the Carpenter's The Thing, you know what's going to happen. So it's kind of like, why should I care? Yeah. And the movie, and it doesn't help in the movie in this case because why should I care about characters that you know are going to die?
Yeah, just kill off a bunch of Norwegians. We don't care. We never get to know them.
Swedes. They're Swedes, right?
Norwegians.
That's the joke. But
that's the joke.
I think that's
great.
Oh,
but there's an alien. Oh.
That's why I think it's great what you're saying, Darkseid, with the Carpenter's The Thing, is that the characters are human. I mean, they're all, as you're saying with them, it's that their reactions are understandable. I mean, you have one, I forgot his name, Windows. Windows' reactions are, he's probably arguably the mentally weakest of the group because of his, he's freaking out, he's going for a 12 gauge, he freezes up in one of the scenes that cost him his life, but at the same time, you can understand why he did that. You're just like, oh good, he deserved to die. You feel bad for him. But at the same time, you understand and sympathize. Come on, how would you feel if you had this thing in front of you?
The quote William Carr in his review of the Thing comic books, no one acts stupid. I mean, they make mistakes that cost them their lives, but no one's an idiot, and no one's really. I mean, no one's not really a jerk. I mean, okay, Childs could be difficult, but look at it from his perspective. He's like, this is voodoo bullshit.
Yeah.
Do you believe any of this, Blair? I mean, you can understand. You kind of understand Childs, even though he may seem a bit of an antagonist.
Yeah, and I mean, with the setting too. Say, I mean, I guess the Thing would win maybe if it had gotten into a populated area, but given that this is an isolated Antarctic base and they've been there for a number of months, just a bunch of guys, doing what research they're supposed to be doing, and have very little else to do in the meantime. They've been a little bit away from all the comforts of civilization. I mean, MacReady, you can tell that they're all like a little bit antsy, because they all got a little bit of cabin fever going on to begin with. I mean, MacReady destroys something like probably it would have been a fairly expensive computer in sort of a fit, after he loses, in a game of chess, so there's a certain amount of of kind of antsiness already that they've got, and then that gets just compounded exponentially, as the film goes on, and they realize, what could be happening, and that there's this, there's enough of a sense that they've gotten away from, that comfort of being able to trust that people are going to act normally. They're in sort of an isolated world of their own in this area. So there's this dual sense of kind of uncanniness going on. The environment itself is pretty alien to begin with, and then that's compounded by them realizing, well, we might not all be human now. And so that final scene, in the film is just such a wonderful way to end it at this sort of slightly ambiguous, kind of ending, because that's really the central tension of the movie is, who's going to show themselves as what they are, first, and so there's all these different layers of horror that are kind of compounded on one another. It's not just that you have these weird, crazy creature effects, but you also have that kind of more primal sense of, can I really trust these other people? Can I really trust that these people are not going to attack me? And in this area that's so far away from all the expectations that are laid on us normally in, like a city or in, our home country.
I think you brought up a very good point, Cave, about weather and the setting and the thing. And I think out of all three movies, this is the best. This one does it the best, showing what an element the weather is as an element in the film. Because I think in the original movie and in the prequel, the weather is only used as a isolation factor. Like, they can't go across the street and call the police or whatever. But I don't think weather was used enough in the original, and I don't think weather was used enough in the prequel. Because in this movie, you see how, obviously it's a combination of setting. They shot this up in, they didn't shoot this in the Antarctic, obviously. They shot this up in Vancouver. Yeah. But a combination of location and makeup effects. They really drive home how cold it is there. Yeah. When there's a scene where
Scenes, actually. Scenes.
I'm forgetting the character's name now. Sadly, the chef, the young kid.
Knowles. I'm sorry, wrong person. I'm sorry.
No,
I know who you're talking about. Roller skater, yeah.
Yeah. He comes in. He says that he thinks that McCready's the thing because he saw his ripped up jacket stuffed in his furnace in his shack, and he said, "I cut the line." Is McCready's safety line because there's a blizzard going on, and McCready has to break a window to get back in, and then when they break into the storeroom, he's just covered in, his face is just frozen from just being outside, exposed into the elements. And when they speak, you see their breath in the air and all that. And so the threat of being frozen to death, the threat of cold, is a very it always shows up as an element in the film that I think the original movie and the prequel kind of fail to take into account. Yeah.
I think what's also great going with the background is that what's fascinating is that it shows, in a sense, that what I found very fascinating when I was listening to Brad Jones and his crew tearing up the prequel was that when they were talking about the thing, you see the background. For example, the movie starts in the nighttime, but then it gets darker and darker and darker, and at the end you see just it's flames and darkness. In a sense, it's just a really great way to kind of like background becomes a characterization of how dangerous the situation is, how dire it is. It's kind of like it's boring and antsy, but as the movie continues going on, it gets just darker and darker and grimmer for the people involved.
Yeah, they also take into account, both in the Arctic and the Antarctic, there are days where there's 24 hours of sun and 24 hours of night, and I'm kind of guessing that in the Carpenter version, because after a while it stops being daylight. And I'm guessing they're entering one of those days where it's 24 hours of night.
Yeah, and that's where it was also going becoming a big concern, is because it's starting to become wintertime for them. And so that's a really big issue, because now the radio's out, or they can't contact anyone. And so it's, an increasing isolation, in the sense that they can't escape. They can't just, take the dogs or take a tractor. They'll freeze to death out there. So it's in the sense that the weather, as you're saying, in the background, are just becoming a characterization of what's going on, and also a way to increase the sense of imprisonment. I think, arguably for me, I think if possible, I think it's just between each viewer. I think maybe just the possible weakness of this film is maybe that we don't get to spend enough time with the other characters. There's a lot of time given to them, but I just wish that there was a little bit more time so you can get to care about the characters a little more and get to know them. Because so when one of them becomes a thing, it's like, holy crap, when that happened. I think it will give them better impact. Again, I think just me, though.
No, it's fine, and I agree. But I think it works as a story that they don't dive into their past lives or whatever, because obviously these guys have been with each other for a while. So obviously they would have gotten all the, Gary says about Bennings. He's like, I knew Bennings. We've known each other for how many years? He was my friend. So we don't get the. I think some maybe horror movies have the scene where they have to be sitting around like saying, "Oh, I like the Chicago Bears. Do you like the Bears?" And,
no, okay. Let me be more specific. I'm sorry. What I mean is, like, for example, the Outpost 34 website. That's the big fan base website for the thing.
31.
They were talking about, there's a scene that was cut that had two of the characters. I think Childs and the other guy. I forget his name. He used to, Palmer. Thank you. Or they're considering burning the marijuana they were growing. And so, I mean, those type of scenes, that's what I'm trying to say, that you can see the interaction. You don't have to get to know their background and stuff like that. And I think it's great you don't have to, because then it gets boring and bogs the story down. But it's just like you have those situations where they're kind of like burning the marijuana, maybe kind of like you see them, two of the guys investigating what's going on. You get to see a little bit more of their character, if that makes sense.
Well, you do get to see Childs and Palmer share a joint while watching taped episodes.
Oh yeah,
I
wish I had seen a little more. That's all. I just wish I'd seen a little bit more.
I am upset that they cut out scenes with McCready and his blow-up doll.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Whoa.
I also was disappointing is that I think the character's name is Knowles, the roller skater. Although at the end of the film he disappears and it's said that he's dead, the thing gets him. What they were saying was that, unfortunately, because of time, I think budget, I think limitations, technological limitations, they were supposed to have
the character's Knowles.
Yeah, Knowles. They're supposed to have him come when the tentacle comes out of the floor that grabbed the TNT. Knowles' character was supposed to come out and you hear him screaming. You see the creature assimilating him, and he's still screaming, "Help! Yeah. McCready, help me!" And the tentacle comes out of his chest and kills Knowles. And it was supposed to be probably the most
horrific,
complex scene
and horrific
transformation
special effect ever created. But yeah, and I think it was cut because of time. Because Rob, we should probably mention him. Rob Bottin's excellent special effects work, and Rob Bottin was basically working around the clock to get all those special effects scenes done. The only exception was Stan Winston helped with the dog scene. He worked on that scene because he wanted to give Rob a rest. So two special effects masters. Sadly, one has now passed away.
Yeah.
And
what's amazing is
Rob Bottin is sort of he kind of disappeared there for a while.
I think what's also amazing is for example, I think it's the scene with the defibrillator scene. What's amazing about that scene is that what happened was they were starting to do the shoot, and they were supposed to start the use of flamethrowers. And what happened was, because of all the chemicals in the air, it caught the whole scene on fire. And I think within a day, they realized what happened. I think they had about several hours Only a few hours to get things together. It's okay. Carpenter says, get the stuff together. We'll do another take. And within a couple hours, the guys got it all done. Again, that scene.
I remember that story. And I remember Rob Bottin said that Carpenter grabbed a fire extinguisher and shoved it into his hands and said, put it out, because it was his fault, because he put something in the it was something in the neck when Norris's head was separating itself from the rest of the body. He put something in there that made, when they have these things called I think they're called fire bars. They're like it's like just a pipe, and they light a fire, and so they had that underneath the camera or in front of the camera or just below the camera lens, so it looks like, it gives the impression that the body's on fire. So when it's screaming and it's pulling and it's ripping itself off from the rest of the body, and that got in the air and it mixed with the chemicals and the thing exploded. So Carpenter was not pleased and said, "This is your fault. Put it out."
Yeah, and what's also amazing is, I think, just the amount of effort, detail, is that they actually had to find a double amputee for the scene where Copper loses his arms. That's an actual amputee guy, just for a couple seconds, mind you.
They found an actual. They put a mask on him.
Yeah, or so I think someone just like him, and the guy had a mining accident, lost both his arms, and so for a couple seconds, the guy was in movie greatness. I mean, I think it was just amazing. And at the same time, you could argue if this film was quality failures, or really, did they really have to do that? But, and then again, it was just amazing that how much effort and love they really put into it.
And again, another factor.
It really shows.
Okay, another factor that we need to acknowledge is the brilliant music work by both Ennio Morricone and John Carpenter. John Carpenter only did his score. His use of music in the movie is very sparse. It's only those scenes where it's it's a synthesizer. But the actual theme, the bum, 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 that was done by legendary composer Ennio Morricone, who apparently was upset that they didn't use all of his cues. But still, it's a great...
For this film?
For this film, yes.
Oh, okay,
because if you listen to the soundtrack, there are music cues that were not used in the film.
Oh yeah.
And it shows sort of like another negative point to the remake, in that they barely used that theme. They used it a little bit at the beginning, and then they used it at the end, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've always felt with any kind of a remake, or a prequel or whatever, that I don't think that the music is one of those things where like you have to have those same cues and that sort of thing. I think if you establish a certain connection by having a few of them, but if ultimately I think the test is if you can make something your own, as far as the music goes, to sort of distinguish it. At least that's just my opinion. So,
but it's just sort of like, this is a prequel to the Carpenter version, and the whole thing was that they were playing up how we recreated this and we recreated that, and look,
they ham-fisted them too. It wasn't even subtle. For example, Brad Jones and one of his buddies was saying this. Like, for example, the axe is in the wall. It's like, don't touch that. It's like, why? And it's just meant to be just kind of, they shoehorned in a reference to Carpenter's film. So it's like, really?
They're gonna find it in the next movie. So leave it there.
Yeah. That's what he said. That's what the guy said. And so it's like, I respect what you're saying, Cave. And just at the same time, how lousy the remake was. Not the remake. It's a remake prequel because they wanted to do it their way. Yeah. Screw them. So, but anyway, but the point is that I understand that, but for this situation, it would have made the private film just a little bit better, because it's like they were shoehorning in all kinds of other references. Okay, and it's like, why not?
It's like you're already copying enough stuff. Why not just go the extra mile? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like with the upcoming RoboCop remake. They're not going to use Basil Palmeiras. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. They're not going to use his. They're not going to use his cue from. They're not going to use the RoboCop theme from the 1987 movies, but with the thing with the prequel, it's sort of like they've made all these connections to the Carpenter version. Then so why not just use more of Morricone's music?
Fair. Yeah, what made yeah. Look, the site looks terrible, but the audio is awesome at least.
Yeah, the music's good.
Yeah, I think what's also, for me, I want to argue this is that as the time goes by, I think arguably the Carpenter's The Thing ages even better. I mean, I think it does a really good job. The film ages, and you can still admire the effects. It's like they age. I think they age better. I think it's sad. I think it's just kind of like the state of the horror film genre at the moment. So at that, there's so much effort pointing in CGI rather than going the extra mile for the realistic effects, if that makes sense. And so it's in a sense that it shows a really high point of horror films at the time. I mean, it shows Carpenter's effectiveness as a horror director. And I think at the time, like the 80s was a return to, in a sense, of 1950s movies, sci-fi movies coming back as horror and gorier, if that makes sense.
Horror and gorier.
So horror and gorier, yeah, as a horror film and as a gorier. Now with more arteries and blood.
I have to say that The Thing has a very unique characteristic about it. Very unique. It is probably the greatest horror movie without an antagonist.
Apart from the thing itself.
No, even the Thing isn't an antagonist. It's essentially an animal
force. Yeah.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree, because in a sense that they emphasize a great deal of concern that if the Thing gets off the Antarctica, it was going to spread. And I think in the sense that given its intelligence, to show how intelligent this thing is, like it can create a UFO. It has, and how it's able to absorb the language, all the little intricacies of a human being, animals and such. I think if it wanted to have peace, it would have done so. I mean, it really is a villain in a sense that, because if it wanted to have peace or just communicate, it would have found a way. And I think especially with the dog scene, you could see all the other animals from other planets has conquered in a sense. So it's really clear for me, in my opinion, from my view, it's really clear that it's a villain. It wants to take over things. That's what it does.
Yeah, I mean, in a simple way of conceiving a villain, I can see where you're coming from with that average gamer. I mean, I think for me, I would tend toward the Doctor's position, in the sense that the Thing is not a character. And I mean, while it takes certain actions, it does show intelligence. It behaves in a way a lot more like a virus, so we wouldn't, if you have, if we're talking about the movie Contagion, we don't talk about the virus as a villainous character in the film. It doesn't have a personhood per se. Okay. That's kind of more, I think, what you're getting at, Doctor, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty much. Essentially, it's like trying to call influenza a villain. It's doing what all life forms do. It propagates to survive.
No problem.
My sort of, I mean, I get what you're saying about the Thing not being the antagonist. Like let's use an example of Jaws, the shark in Jaws. That wasn't really an antagonist. It was just a creature that needed to be stopped. It was just doing what sharks do: eat and devour everything that moves. All it does is eat and swim and make little sharks, and that's it. But if you remember, I think the Thing is not just not just a virus or not just a creature, a simple creature, in that And beyond the whole the attempt to make a UFO, the thing does show more villainous qualities in itself, in that it actually frames MacReady for a bit. Again, when Knowles finds MacReady's jacket ripped up and shoved into his furnace, and someone obviously left the light on, that showed that the thing knew how to frame someone, because the thing figured out that they know that it rips through your clothes when it takes you over, because they find a pair of long johns with the name tag ripped off, and it's size large, and they all wear large. So the thing figured out, I can frame someone. I could frame MacReady, who's sort of the quasi leader here. I can easily frame.
He is the leader.
Well, yeah, he becomes the leader after Gary can't handle it. I could frame him. And by just putting, and also he sort of frames Gary, because Gary was the only one who had access to the blood.
And also, not just Gary, Copper. I mean, everyone. He frames everyone. The thing is able. If it helps you, Darkseid, is that I think the thing is able to destroy the trust of all the people. I mean, everyone's going after one another, and it's like you have
to argue that you can make the argument that it's doing that to survive. I mean, if you were in the same situation...
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. I mean, I think it's honestly
But it's more than just animalistic. Because if it was the thing, the prequel, is an animal. It just lashes out willingly at all times. People are it has no consistency at all. That would be a case of it being animalistic. I think that I respectfully disagree. I think that the thing in Carpenter's version is a little bit more advanced than that.
Okay. And I think looking at the film, I think it's actually really surprising how short it is. I mean, when the things really get going, when the action starts, like I was really surprised when I first watched it, or the whole way through, that how fast it ended, if it makes sense. I mean, it's just like, okay, it starts picking up, and all of a sudden, by the time the explosions start, really get started, it's like, it's over. It's like, I'm not complaining. It's like, whoa, that's it? It's like, yeah. It's like, interesting.
Yeah, it's a telltale sign of a good movie when a movie passes and you're like, oh, it's over? Damn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and in Carpenter's, I not to toot my own horn, but I wrote this blog post when I was just like watching a bunch of John Carpenter's movies like in a row, and he is very economical when it comes to time. Usually his films don't go longer than about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes. That it's a rare thing. He tends to get through a plot in pretty good time, I would say.
Yeah.
And yet, I think with the thing, it seems like it takes its time.
Oh yeah. I mean,
sure. It's strange that it's not a long movie, but it takes its time. Kind of like with Alien.
It's properly edited. I mean, I think that's what's great. I think people.
Exactly.
There's I think the necessary amount of time it's done for what needs to be done. I mean, it covers the bases of what a horror film needs to be done. I mean, I won't say it's one of the greatest films, horror films of all time. I mean, it's a way to show how other horror films should be done. I mean, the cinematography is beautiful, and what bothers me about a lot of films,
it's a great looking film.
Yeah. And I think what bothers me about a lot of other movies is that, because Carpenter helped bring up the way of the techniques of a steady motion camera. A camera you can move without, having the footsteps, the shakes and wobbles. It's all nice and smooth. And now today, people are doing the zooms and the shakes. Like, we went backwards. I mean, it's beautiful. Like, for example, you're going down the hallways. I mean, in the beginning of the movie, you've seen how quiet and lonely it is.
Using Garrett Brown's study cam.
Yeah, and at the end of the film, you see the explosions. You see it's quietly moving backwards, and you just see the explosions, just the base getting torn apart, and it's like, it's beautiful. I mean, it's done right. You get to appreciate and absorb what's going on. You have enough time to see, register what's going on. It's like, oh, okay, and I think that enhances the experience. Well, what else can we talk about this film? I mean, it's a great film. Period.
Yeah, it's sort of getting hard. It's like, what other praise can we shower on this film?
I think also, we were talking about this in the very beginning of this discussion, but I think at the same time, had the thing not it failed, I think rather than a lot of cult movies that Carpenter said, screw it, I'm just going to do what I want. Big Trouble in Little China. You have all these other two films that he said, okay, I'm going to just stick to this. They Live, stuff like that. Think about it. I mean, Duke Nukem might not have existed because of They Live, if that makes sense.
You know what? Well, you wouldn't have had. Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot, E.T. All your happiness and your Skittles. Oh, no, what was
Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces.
Reese's Pieces. That'll be a pretty interesting fight. E.T. versus the Thing. Who is deadliest?
It's like
it's just like rips E.T. in half, and E.T.'s like, ouch.
It's like when the brother shows the sister E.T. She screams. She runs into her parents' room. Mom, get the flamethrower. What the what? You heard me? Move.
Now move. Yeah, and what's actually really funny is that how great this film is, that the people in the Antarctica base, they watch this film and another film before they leave, or so it's like, in a sense, it just commemorates and shows the accuracy.
March of the Penguins.
Maybe. That's actually weird.
I don't know.
That's weird. Parent-loving film, horror film. But I think what do you guys want to talk about next? You want to go to the next film? I mean,
on towards Prince of Darkness.
Prince of Darkness.
This is not a dream. This is not a dream. This is not a dream. That's the only part of the movie I know. Is that and the bug guy. I have some bad news for you. You're not gonna like it. Pray for death.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I mean, I would say that in terms of the idea of the end of the world, being kind of the main theme that The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness all share. To me, I mean, we've kind of gone on and on about The Thing. I think The Thing is the most effective at really conveying that sense of things are going to go bad. And with Prince of Darkness and In the Mouth of Madness, you get kind of the sense that the world is already over. It's just the characters are just catching up and slowly beginning to realize just how fucked they are. But Prince of Darkness has some interesting ideas for being kind of a bottle movie. Alice Cooper as a vagrant who says nothing. Basically, the gist is that if you have not seen the film, and it's been a little while since I've seen it, so my memory is going to be a little hazy. Feel free to chime in any point, Doctor. Basically, you have this artifact that's discovered that I think Donald Pleasance, who is playing this interestingly and increasingly paranoid priest, examines, and a few other scientists are called in because there's this phenomenon going on associated with this artifact. It's found in the basement of this church, and go ahead.
I was just going to say Satan's blood.
Yeah, Yeah, something like that. And they so they basically, like, there's a couple of things going on. That you have these scientists from Caltech who go in to take a look at it because it has these just intriguing physical properties that seem to demonstrate some of what they're studying in terms of quantum physics. And then at the same time, Donald Pleasance's character basically lets them in on some Lovecraftian horror that the church has been trying to conceal for a number of years.
Forgive me, is Donald Pleasance the same guy who plays the doctor to chase after Michael?
Yes, he does play Dr. Loomis in Halloween.
So he literally is seeing the devil now, not the devil's eyes anymore, huh?
Yeah, it's literally...
and former president of the United States.
Yes, exactly. And so he's got this whole thing going on where he's kind of letting them in on how these interdimensional beings have essentially served as that they've kind of twisted them to their own needs, but now it's time for the truth to come forward, and so there's this kind of pseudo faith versus science thing going on, and as the scientists get into the church, and basically all these events start happening that are, just increasingly weird. This particular artifact, starts to dribble forth this kind of strange goo, and possesses, some people over the course of time. And basically, what you find out is happening is that there's this kind of interdimensional portal that's about to be made, that's going to allow, I believe, Satan to come through into our universe and basically wreck all our shit.
Sadly, Donald Pleasance does not shoot at Satan, going, "You're number one."
Yeah, you're the Duke of New York.
It sounds like the plot to Doom. You know that?
It's
the
Doom.
video game.
It's Doom, but in a church.
Yeah, it's Doom in a church. And and as these scientists are working on all this stuff, a bunch of weird things start happening on the outside. In particular, a bunch of vagrants begin to display just kind of hostility. They're just sort of gathered outside, and they pretty much block in the scientists. They prevent them from leaving. I think they attack one guy and kill him with a bicycle. And so it's
death by training wheels.
Yeah, death by death by frame. And so it's sort of it's one of those movies like Night of the Living Dead, where everybody's trapped in this one place. There's this swarm of drone-like threatening creatures that are surrounding them, that they're trying to both keep out and also are sort of keeping them trapped in this one location, so they can't get out. And they have a character who's been infected by the virus, or the interdimensional goo, Satan's spunk.
He's infected by the T-virus.
Exactly. Who they're trying to keep isolated, but is possessing other people, turning them against one another, and
so Wilford Brimley's in this movie as well.
I would say the spirit of Wilford Brimley is in this movie.
Remember to eat oatmeal.
I wanted to eat some oatmeal after it was done. So, Satan's spunk looks a lot like something from a Nickelodeon game show.
It's Slime Time Live.
Is it non-toxic?
I hope so. It basically forces its way into your mouth.
Just like Nickelodeon programming.
So essentially, I think it gets a little. It's sort of just got that tension of like, what are we going to do? I don't know. What do you think we should do? And there's all this stuff going on that I don't understand. So so that's kind of the main tension of the movie. And then by the end, there's that moment where Satan's about to cross through. And then there's the thing that Darkside's been referring to, that I think provides quite a bit of horror for the movie, is that they are able to they get these periodic broadcasts that are from the future, and these broadcasts are placed on this tape, or on a video camera. So you have this. We were just talking about how with the Thing there's this use of the Steadicam, and we have more of a modern take on, or the more modern horror films tend to use kind of handheld cameras.
And remember, we saw handheld footage used by the Norwegians when they were filming them getting finding the ship underneath the ice.
That's true, but I think in this case it has more like to me this felt more like kind of a predecessor to the more modern take on films where you have this sort of eerie quality to the broadcast because of that grainy handheld kind of messy framing of what's being shot, that it feels somehow like you're watching something real. And these broadcasts are coming basically from the future, and it sort of shows this guy in the frame of door frame of the church, basically kind of like spreading this cloak, and looking threatening and sort of monstrous, almost like a Dracula figure, who I suppose is supposed to be the Prince of Darkness, and so they're sort of getting some tips, even as they're sort of clueless. As far as like how to prevent all these events going on. So
I have a question. In all fairness, I want to go back to just explain myself a little further. I respect that when a camera shakes. I think it's just, for me, it's just how much they do it these days.
Oh, sure.
A lot of films do it. That's what I'm trying to say. I know you weren't attacking my point. I just wanted to clarify, just in case.
Oh, absolutely.
Misunderstood.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I think, I mean, really what it comes down to is any kind of tool that you have in order to tell your story can be used properly, it can be underutilized, or it can be overused. And I think the problem that you're citing is more the overuse of the tool of having that kind of, cinema verite sort of thing going on, but then it just goes a little too far, and it becomes kind of this excuse for various things, like, like we can't really afford to have a cool choreographed fight, so we're just gonna, shake the camera around and make it seem like there's a lot of action happening.
I just want to point out very quickly, because we were talking about the use of Steadicam. Obviously, the Steadicam was invented by Garrett Brown, and first time it was actually used. I can't remember the movie it was first used. Notably, it was used in Rocky, and very noticeably, it was used in The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, with Garrett Brown actually there operating the Steadicam.
Wait. Also, the Halloween.
Oh wait, no, I was getting to that. In Halloween,
sorry.
In Halloween, Carpenter did not use the Steadicam. He used its competitor, a Panaglide, which does the same thing, but it's by a different. That's fine. No, that's fine. I was like, because you mentioned the Escape from New York commentary using the Panaglide, and I'm like, I wonder the difference between that and a Steadicam. It's basically the same thing, but it was a competitor.
Also, bear with me. I have not watched this film, what the film is about is these religious people, experts, and these scientific experts working together to stop the devil from coming through, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the scientific experts, initially what it's all about is that they want to observe an interesting event, that has pertinence to their studies in quantum physics, and then eventually they come to realize, the apocalypse is upon us. So,
but I think it's really neat. What is when you talk about is that how you have these two groups that in film, a cliche is that science explains everything. There's no God, and then you have the other extreme where God explains everything. There's no need for science, and so I think it's really interesting to see these two groups to come together to attempt. I'm not sure. I don't know how the film ends, but to attempt or to stop the devil from coming. So in the sense that it follows Carpenter's way of, the evil comes from within, and I think it puts, shows that how people create their own evil, in a sense, that divides people.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in this case, because there is a certain like the next movie we're going to talk about is the most Lovecraftian, but to the point where they're pretty much just kind of like cobbling together various Lovecraft stories. But this one is, certainly the idea is that the more you have sort of let yourself go, the more self-indulgent you are, the easier it is for you to be manipulated. One person in particular is possessed, and she's not especially cruel or whatever, but so it takes a little while before the possession kind of manifests itself. But so it's like evil can come from outside of you, but it's helped by the evil that can, or the dark impulses rather, that lurk within.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting in a sense that how, also just how the apocalyptic effect. I think it seems interesting, like how one movie attempts to stop, stops. Anyway, sorry.
That's fine.
Edit.
Doctor, do you have any thoughts on Prince of Darkness?
It's usually the one that I sort of remember the least of the three films. I really do like you were saying, the interpretation of evil coming from within, which is sort of, you can sort of say, is a bit of a knock towards religion too, where you have these religious extremists who go, "Oh, the devil is in you, blah, the devil is in you," and then you look at this and the devil really is in you, but it's sort of almost like it's a bit of an I don't want to say a parody, but sort of lampooning that whole mindset.
I'm looking to see if I can find my review of it from a little while ago. But which quote here? Sorry about that, dark side.
No, we can read that. You can do that at the end.
Okay.
Should we move on to In the Mouth of Madness?
I think so.
Yeah.
Forgive me. Is the In the Mouth of Madness the movie? Okay.
Sam Neill freaking out on a bus.
No, is Apocalypse Now? Is it where if it's Apocalypse Now from essentially a story based on it? I forget which book it is about. The Mouth of Madness, where Apocalypse Now is basically the movie version based on Vietnam.
Heart of Darkness.
Heart of Darkness. I'm sorry. Ugh. So much darkness.
So much dark. You're filled with darkness, average gamer. I can't even see you anymore. So much darkness around you.
God, is Melisandre in here? The night is dark and full of terrors.
I say, have you read Sutter Kane?
But
Doctor, why don't you tell us what In the Mouth of Madness is about?
Okay. Well, essentially, I'm trying to remember. Give me a second. Because I'm sort of remembering fractures of it, so...
Tell you what, I'll get it started.
I'm trying to remember.
Way to go, dog. No, no. basically, and I mean, the plot's a bit easier than Prince of Darkness because it's just sort of stuff happens in that one. But in the Mouth of Madness, Sam Neill is an insurance claims
Insurance investigator,
and his so Sutter Kane's publishers come to him because they're concerned about their author, that they've basically lost contact with him, and he's a significantly popular author, so kind of a valuable asset. Yeah, he's basically Stephen King, and so they're kind of concerned, and they want him found. So so he gets kind of on the case, and he's not really much of a horror movie or horror book reader, so he isn't really a huge fan, so he doesn't know a whole lot about the author other than that he's popular. And around this same time, there's this new book that's come out by Sutter Kane. I believe this is the same title as the film, and people are going literally crazy, like psychotic, over this particular book. And
John Carpenter's going to be directing the film adaptation.
Yeah, and John Carpenter's directing the film adaptation. It's coming up. So
hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's good.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait to see it.
So at one point, so initially this is just kind of like rote, whatever case for Sam Neill's character, but then he's in a restaurant talking with somebody he knows who's basically giving him some information to help him, just track down Sutter Kane, and he gets attacked by a guy who's been across the street at the bookstore, and the guy has an axe in hand, and of course I think if I remember correctly, I think the friend is a police officer or something like that. Anyway, so the guy with the axe, who's the Sutter Kane fan, he says something like, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" And then is about to just chop up Sam Neill, and then the guy gets gunned down, and so these kind of increasingly creepy things start happening to Sam Neill, and he's reading through Sutter Kane, of course, so he can kind of get familiar, see what might be going on in this guy's head, and he slowly starts seeing things that are happening in these books, and one of the agents from the publisher comes along and to help him out. So maybe you could take over from there.
Well, you pretty much surmised the whole plot pretty well. I mean, essentially, he's slowly going nuts from reading this book, which is kind of a nod to Lovecraftian horror, where somebody's going to partake in something and you see it slowly driving them insane. Like, for example,
Twilight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, for example, take The Whisperer in Darkness by H.P. Lovecraft, where they have the main character looking for this doctor, and you see it like him experiencing these things and slowly questioning his own sanity. Like, is what he's seeing real, or is he going off the deep end? And it's a nice parallel between this and that, or between that and at the Mountains of Madness, or at the Mouth of Madness. Whoops. But it's interesting to see the parallels between Lovecraftian horror and this, because this is pretty much a true, without using one of Lovecraft's stories, it's a true adaptation of Lovecraft's mindset with his horror and how he presented the horror, where it was more about somebody questioning their own sanity, their own mental well-being, as opposed to, say, when you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's an obvious, or not even Nightmare on Elm Street, say Friday the 13th, where it's an obvious killer. And one of my favorite parts in the entire film, without going sort of too far ahead, is you remember at the end of the film where he wakes up in and he opens the door to the sanitarium and he goes through the town and it's all desolate. And you see him go and sit in the theater watching pretty much his own life flash before his eyes.
Right.
I mean, that was one of my... That is pretty much how I look at the rest of the film, is he's sitting in the theater seat, essentially, throughout the entire movie, watching the events play out. And where he thinks he actually has choices, he's going down a predestined route. He's screwed no matter what he does.
Right. And, now that you mentioned that, I just remembered that the framing device was that that Sam Neill is in a straitjacket, and one of the doctors at the sanitarium is interviewing him and saying, all right, just calm down, tell me where it all began, and so. Yeah.
Which is where all great Lovecraft stories either end or start, with someone in a straitjacket.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And I think, and that's sort of one of the things that, that really makes that ending resonate, is that, he's told, multiple times, throughout the movie, and then, he's, more and more resistant to it as it becomes, more and more horrifying, all the circumstances he finds himself in. But he seems to start believing it, that the idea that he's part of this big, revelation that the old ones are putting forward on the earth, that they're going to be coming, through this and basically literally blowing everybody's minds. So.
Yeah, it seems that Sam Neill's the kind of guy who seems really good at falling into personifying the decline into madness, if that makes sense. What's the other film I forget he does?
The guy wasn't the same.
Event Horizon?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
The guy
We're leaving.
The guy wasn't the same after he saw all those dinosaurs.
And then let us not forget that he began his career playing the Antichrist. So.
Oh, yeah. Omen 3.
But looking back at this, since we're kind of slowing down, what can people learn from these three films, would you say? What do you hope people can learn from it, look back onto it? Not just making, I'm just saying, just doing a film.
On that question, do you mean cinematically or thematically, or
anything?
If you're a character in a John Carpenter film, you usually end up fucked.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I was going to say, well, we can learn that we're fucked, basically.
Either you freeze to death, the devil comes to claim you, or you sit in a theater watching your own life play, directed by John Carpenter.
But, at the same time, though, although these things, it's really depressing, but, there's so many other things that a person can learn. The cinematography, the idea of how... his idea of what evil is.
You can make a brilliant horror movie without jump scares.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good point.
Or with a minimum of jump scares.
Very true.
Or well executed jump scares.
Well executed jump scares. Yeah, it's fine.
I don't think there's any scene in The Thing where there was something. Like there was none of those scenes where someone's alone in a room and someone comes up and saying, "Hey!" and they jump and they go.
Oh yeah.
How many times in horror movies have you seen that scene where someone's alone in a room and they're focusing on something and someone comes behind them?
Prequel.
Oh yeah, the prequel. There you go. It's like you're one of them that's like, "Hey, what?" And then it's like, "Hey, it's just me." Well, why don't you just announce yourself when you walked in the room?
It's like, "You son of a bitch, we got a killer on the loose."
I'm a firm believer that jump scares should be like highlighters. They should be used to highlight the horror, the tension. They shouldn't be used as the horror, because they're not scary. You can startle anybody.
I can think of one, like probably the best jump scare of all time, in my opinion, is in the movie The Haunting. The 1960s.
Oh, the one when the body comes up from the attic.
Yeah.
You see that lady pop up.
Yeah,
Oh.
because like up to that point, it's been like building tension, and just so much, and it's just like you have this like release all of a sudden, and it's perfect.
I think
Oh,
I
Carrie.
think I think for me it was Alien when Tom Skerritt is in the shafts
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
in the and it's, you hear the beat. They're like, no, it's in the other direction. It's this is the way, and he's just in there alone with a flamethrower. It's dark. He can't see
Right.
very
Yeah.
far, and just it's right there.
No screens either.
Well, there is a scream. The alien screams when it grabs
Oh,
him.
Dallas. No, Dallas doesn't scream. That's what I think was the best part of
Yeah.
for me, that whole scene. I think it just shows how cool Dallas is. I mean, Dallas I liked because it's just
Oh, I'm sure.
how
I'm
calm.
sure he wanted to scream, but it was just.
Scared, man. He's cool.
He just. I'm sure he wanted to scream, but there was just no time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Oh, I just want to say, what someone can learn from cinematically from Carpenter's films is that. Okay, all you really need to do is watch The Thing, and then watch the prequel, and there you go. Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Draw your own conclusions.
I think what's interesting is I think it's a spiral in a sense, how filming goes, in the sense that ideas come and go and they return in a different fashion, if that makes sense. And I'm very confident and I'm hopeful that with Carpenter, he's been making a slow comeback, or attempting to make a comeback over the years, and
comeback.
hopefully with this next film.
Emphasis on
Yeah.
slow. I mean, I
Yeah.
think in the Mouth of Madness could be in the Mouth of Madness, aka John Carpenter's only good film from the '90s.
Arguably, and some people still like Escape from L.A., stuff like that.
Yeah, well.
I didn't
yeah.
mind Memoirs of an Invisible Man myself, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That just seems like a
I think-
strange. Some people have said, "Oh, like they point out like Christine or Starman or even the TV movie Elvis is like kind of weird vehicles for Carpenter." But a comedy with Chevy Chase just seems like an odd vehicle for John Carpenter. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a the sci-fi aspect of it is not as comedic as you would expect, but it's definitely comedy stuff in it. But for what people could learn from the Apocalypse trilogy, cinematically, I think what you can learn from it is that you don't need necessarily monsters or some kind of well-defined threat in order to scare people, because ultimately those kinds of scares are really temporary. They're kind of like the jump scares that we're talking about, with a certain amount of disdain. That really the thing that scares people most is the stuff that they really can't quite get a handle on, and things like the world is not permanent, or that there are certain things that we don't know and we can't really understand. That particular one being like the kind of the big thing that they hit on Prince of Darkness, and that the things that we trust in, that are not necessarily going to be permanent. Those are kind of the things that I think ultimately get at that kind of that Freudian concept of the uncanny. The thing that we have a certain grasp on, but we just can't grasp fully. That has like a slight familiarity to it, but is enough that we have a fear of it. That is unknown to us. That's a really poor sum up of the idea of the uncanny. But
Yeah, that's fine.
So that'd be my thought in terms of storytelling. That I think that those kinds of stories can really hit home, and I think that in certain modern horror movies, I think you can see where people have taken cues from Carpenter, even as they're sort of, you could place them a little bit more in sort of the the trends that you see going on in horror films or in sci-fi films in general. I think of the movie like we've mentioned, that this has more of your classic kind of stuff going on in terms of filmmaking equipment and in terms of storytelling techniques. But I think of the movie, the excellent Spanish film Rec, in terms of not really doing a whole lot to explain what's going on, why things came to be the way that they are. I mean, that you can recognize, well enough that there's a zombie outbreak going on, and that these poor people are being quarantined in their building. But the way that everything builds together is, very effective in that, and really has that kind of sense of pacing and that good use of the tools that they have in terms of making that movie to come up with a really interesting and memorable experience.
I don't want to be the last but not least, but I think for me, I can only speak for The Thing, but I think for me, The Thing gave me one of those. I know this sounds really funny, but I couldn't watch the film when I was around 7 years old. I couldn't watch it. I got to the point where the Thing was starting to come out from underneath the sheet and take on the first guy of the American group. It's like, okay, that's it. I can't watch anymore because I was just so grossed out.
I'm surprised you got past the dogs.
Yeah, God, watching that movie
shocked.
at 7.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and here, talking about, I know this sounds really funny, but here's how, like, for me, how it's a great film. It teaches you something, regardless of what it is, comedy, drama, whatever. Yeah, but you look behind your back. That's it. I mean, ever since I go to the bathroom, open the door and stuff, I look behind me. It's like,
Well, for Brimley to be there,
I think,
have you been eating your oatmeal?
Yeah.
Diabetes.
And here's an experience. I think it just shows. I think it got me. I remember one time I decided to go jogging. It was really, really, really cold. I mean, I had 3-4 layers of clothes on for this jog. I think it was about 20 degrees out. Middle of the, I think it was really early morning. No one's out. It's absolutely quiet, and the air is very, very cold, very crisp. And I'm jogging up.
That dog.
And all I hear is, huh?
That dog runs up to you.
No. But what happens is, it was kind of like getting really quiet, and then it's like this one. I think it was like this almost blue light, and all of a sudden I just thought this, bum bum. I started looking around in my head.
I listen to that music on my morning jog all the time.
No, it wasn't even listening.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
It's just so soothing, so hip, so groovy. And it just came naturally. It's like bum bum, and I just started looking around like for no reasons. Like, okay, why did I just do that? And I think it's in the sense that that's how you know a film really, you're attached to a film, is that, or a film impacted you, is that you, even after the film's over, you learn to look behind your back, and you just kind of like, in a sense, you kind of have this look over your shoulder. It's like, what could get me? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure. After science, I stayed away from pantries.
No, water squirter. There, done.
I don't trust pantries anymore.
Well, you're fine if you have a wooden door.
Yeah, wood seems to stop them.
Damn, those humans, they're so clever.
Yeah, and I don't know what else to say. I mean, they're all great films. They seem to be. The Thing's a great film. I don't know about the other two. I think they're pretty good. I'm watching. I'm loading some scenes.
They're definitely not great films like The Thing is, but I'd say they're decent.
Oh. I'm not gonna compare and contrast. I mean, it's really neat to see one director do stuff. I mean, John Carpenter, in a sense, arguably single-handedly created the horror genre the way it is today. I mean, you have a slasher horror films. You know, Michael Myers. He personified evil into a human form, which is done with Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, and all the other the horror films that try to follow it, in a sense. We argue for better or for worse, but in a sense that you see that. I mean, in the sense that, unfortunately, it'd be nice to have a horror film that makes you care about characters. In a sense, they don't have to be the smartest characters in the world, but you just care about them. It's like, yeah, they're human. You want to see them. They do something, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And then it's not. It's like, oh, crap.
I think what you can take away from John Carpenter's work is that he managed to create classic, memorable, well-executed movies with less than half of the budgets that movies are made nowadays.
That's right.
He made brilliant movies.
Preach it, brother.
On peanuts. I mean, even his student film, which was made into a feature film, Dark Star, that is for a student film, it's definitely I mean, it's not a perfect A+ movie, but considering that this was a film that he made with some friends at college, it was a student film. It's a marvelous achievement, and it's sort of sad that it's sort of sad that you see what he created with very small budgets, even small for the time. Like Escape from New York wasn't a very high budget movie, but the movie still looks good. And so it's kind of sad that when you compare it to its studio-funded sequel, Escape from LA, which is far inferior compared to Escape from New York. Exactly what the doctor just wrote in the chat here. Big movies, not big budgets. And I think we are living in an era where action and horror is throw money and throw everything at the screen and just get people to go see it in theaters. That's it. You see Transformers, you see any kind of horror movie, it's sort of like, make it as bloody as you can, make it as flashy as you can, but people forget sort of the context of it. Like, The Thing was, for its time, it still is a very gory movie, but there's context to that, and there's reason for it, and it's not the gore. It's very excessive, and it's to the point of where you say, okay, only a sick, deprived mind could think of that, raw protein. And but there's reason for it. It wasn't thrown in there just because oh,
it's not there for titillation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think what's also is interesting is that I know we're branching away from the apocalyptic films, but I think what's also great about Carpenter with his work is that despite him falling out of favor with the big budget films with The Thing afterwards, he continued to create some great cult classics. I mean, as you're saying, Darkseid, with small budgets, films that are still regarded great as great films. I mean, Big Trouble in Little China. These two films we were talking about, two other films we're talking about, and in a sense that you can see how the directors have taken some inspiration from it, arguably to Tarantino, with a sense that it's a small budget, but there's so much effort and love put into it, and references to other films. Whether he ripped it off or not, that's an argument for another time. But in the sense that you see that with other directors doing that, and hopefully in a time that maybe someone will come along and copy that. And I think also in the sense that we're talking about a lot of money being thrown at horror films, action films. For me, it's nice that this summer that didn't work out. I think now companies have to realize they need to stop and pause and say, we got to be more effective with our budgets. We need to make better films. Let's be smarter. And in a sense that with that mindset, hopefully they'll create films that are much better, that would give great entertainment. I mean, honest, good entertainment. It isn't just, oh yeah, it's $20 worth to see them blow each other up. I mean, it's like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing too with Carpenter's stuff, I mean, I kind of, and not to plug my blog, but because I'm not going to give my address for it, but he really does live up to that last name. I mean, there is a blue collar craftsmanship to his movies, that he is not ashamed of, but he's not a dumb guy, he is a smart filmmaker, and the movies that we're talking about, are again, significantly lower budget than a lot of the contemporary movies. Maybe with The Thing, that had about a normal budget, for a studio film, but they're very intelligent movies that work on multiple levels and that require you to pay attention to what's going on in order to really get the full effect. And you're not necessarily, I wouldn't say they're necessarily cerebral kind of movies, but they definitely, like, if you think about the things that are going on in The Thing, like, you could really write a fairly detailed essay about the different themes that are happening, the different levels of story that are going on in that. Same thing for Prince of Darkness or for In the Mouth of Madness, which is, again, which is a movie that relies very heavily on literary ideas, on that these are books, that these are words and ideas, that you're imagining, and so there's a certain sense in which you really do have to have your brain engaged, with these kinds of things, and a lot of the big budget stuff really becomes a lot of spectacle that sort of wants you not to think. And just to take it as a visceral experience, and I think Carpenter is one of those guys who, through the years, has really resisted making a movie just a pure visceral kind of experience. Just something to kind of big bright lights and flashy stuff to kind of keep your mind occupied for a couple of hours and just kind of forget about stuff, but he really wants you to kind of engage with stuff, and I think that's really one of those things that I would hope other filmmakers would latch onto, and I do see some filmmakers latching onto with some success. I know the filmmaker Scott Derrickson, who did Sinister, which is not a perfect horror movie by any stretch, but I felt was better than some of the other horror films that were coming out the same year by a long stretch, for sure. And there's others who are trying to make the most of what they're doing and really make an interesting film that has an interesting story with interesting people in it, and that doesn't rely on just again, like you mentioned, lots of blood, lots of whatever, is sort of just the most superficial aspect of a particular trend in order to get people's butts in seats.
Well, all you have to do is look at the big budget remakes of John Carpenter's films: Assault on Precinct 13, Halloween, The Thing, Prequel, The Fog. And hopefully we will not be getting a remake of Escape from New York or Big Trouble in Little China, or They Live, for that matter.
They really shook the pillars of Hollywood, didn't they, Darkside?
They sure did.
But I think, it's shame on me for saying this. I know I didn't translate this well in my head, so bear with me. But what's interesting is that we just talked about, how many other horror films teach you something? I mean, they really teach you not like, be afraid of the water. Like Jaws. I mean, they really teach you that you got to trust one another. You got to work together. You got to. I mean, for example, what's also great about, looking at it, it's like it's very ambiguous symbolism with these films that make sense. There's nothing that bash you over the head. You can take what you want from it. For example, as we were saying earlier, you could put AIDS, you could put the Red Scare, you could put, religion versus science. You could put like all that in. And you put that there, you say you got to put your differences aside, and you got to come together in some form.
Right now, over me.
You can run it. I mean, and I think it's really fascinating that you don't see that with many horror films. I mean, especially with horror films, it's just that, oh yeah, that lady had got great boobs, great butt, and then that's it. That's the highlight of the film. This, you can say, man, it's horrifying, but I learned something.
True. I mean, not to belabor a movie that we've already discussed at length, but on that note of sort of a personal edification that you can get from a horror movie, I mean, to what extent the movie Aliens is, could be considered a horror film. I mean, that's one movie, where, I feel it does genuinely convey that idea of facing your fears and and confronting what is keeping you paralyzed, even if you do it imperfectly, so that you can live, and I think that is a valuable thing. And I mean, with horror films, to some extent it can be, it can be cautionary, it could be I mean, we mentioned Jaws, where essentially, it's more of a personal growth for for Sheriff Brody, right?
Yeah, I mean everyone. I mean they had. I mean
right.
Shaw's character and the marine biologist had to settle their differences in order to attempt to take down the shark. So you have that idea right there as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think we've discussed this topic to death.
Well, what was this?
Why don't we just sit here a while, see what happens?
Stole my idea.
Here, have some
clever.
If they ever make a remake, they gotta have.
Average gamer here, have some scotch.
Bum bum. Bum bum. Where were you, Darkseid?
I thought I saw Blair. I chased him out and I lost him.
Wait, no. You saw the prequel. Wait, that was a prequel. That was a prequel. And by the way,
I thought I saw a prequel out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we have any surprises left in this discussion, I don't think we're in very much shape to do anything about it.
Come on, we got another hour. But I think, in all seriousness, and to those who are watching this, there's a link. I'll give it to Darkseid, but there's a link to a great spoof on the Thing trailer, prequel trailer.
Oh, the crew watching.
Yes, that's fantastic.
How much more of this crap do we have to watch?
Yeah, it'll be hopefully if Darkseid needs it, I'll give it to him. But it's a great link, and you might get a great couple of laughs.
There's also
are there any other?
There's also a spoof of the Prometheus trailer where it's Kurt Russell's character Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China basically saying, "What? What does this mean? What does that mean? Will someone tell me what's going on?"
That would make the movie Prometheus so awesome. Just get Jack in there.
Yeah. When they awaken the engineer at the end, he's speaking in that like weird language. Would someone tell me what's going on here?
Yeah.
And they're like, who the hell are you? He's like, who the hell are you?
I got it.
Yeah. You know what
Jack Burton... I got it. Give me your...
Go ahead.
Jack Burton. It'll be Jack Burton's great grandson.
You know what my great grandfather old Burton used to say? Who? Jack Burton. Yeah. Me. He says, what the hell? It's all in the reflexes. And from all of us here at Axis of Action, Happy Halloween. Don't ever do that again.
You know, there are still some people who don't know that the cost of their diabetes testing supplies may be covered by Medicare. Well, if you have diabetes and you're on Medicare, the testing supplies may be covered. Here's how it works. Liberty is a Medicare participating provider. They bill Medicare and your insurance company. You pay nothing up front. Your testing supplies are delivered right to your door and no charge for shipping. You have nothing to worry about because when it's time to reorder, Liberty will remind you. They'll even send you a free meter if you... Call Liberty today at 1-800-903-3756.